Yo, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to East West Reviews. Thank you so much for joining me today, and a special thanks to everyone who's coming back. Again, I can't thank you guys enough for returning to these videos and all the support. And to everyone that's new, thank you for tuning in for the first time. Hopefully you like what you see, hopefully enough to comment, like, and subscribe, or dislike if you really feel like it. But regardless, thank you so much for coming on through. So I was really surprised at how this episode started off. I expected the crew to be sitting, laying low, trying to plot their next move. In this case, trying to find out where Omega was, who her captor is, and how to basically get her back. But surprisingly, they start off in a cat fight with Crosshair, who's amazingly able to pilot a ship and chase after them. Of course, they're able to get away from him, and Crosshair crashes, upsettingly, of course. But I'm sure he's going to be back, no time at all. And of course, he's going to be back stronger and probably more dangerous, because at this point, it's personal, and he really wants to go ahead and get them. So after they escape, we find out the identity of Omega's capture. It was Cad Bane, who through Echo he tells that he's a notorious bounty hunter with numerous run-ins with the Jedi during the Clone Wars. Of course, people who've seen him in that TV show know he was a force to be reckoned with. Got one up on them many of times, and definitely someone not to mess with. So I think the biggest thing for me to come out of this episode was probably what came from the Kaminoans, also the Bad Batch a little as well. But like I've been saying a few times throughout this series, the Kaminoans are behind the scenes of many things going on, and of course we learned that they were behind the scenes of the bounty hunters all this time, and we also finally learned why. So along with the crew, we learned from the Kaminoans why Omega is so special, and they reveal that she is a first-gen clone replica of Jango Fett himself, making her extremely rare and extremely valuable to the Kaminoans in terms of their entire operation. And she's also so rare as far as for them to as far as the crew to explain that the only other person that's like her is a clone made for Jango Fett himself that we know as Boba Fett, which honestly I don't know what that could mean for the future of Boba Fett, but I'm not going to get into that at this moment in time, later on in the video. But that's a huge fact for her to know about. We also learn that the Kaminoans at the same time are not on the same page. So overall, as a group, they acknowledge the need to retrieve Omega, that she is key to their operation. So the Prime Minister has them hire Cad Bane, who we know is just taking her back and is on his way to them right now. But we also learn in this episode that Nala Se, who's sort of, I guess, the caretaker of Omega, was the one who hired Fennec Shan all along, and in return to bring her back to her, and also keep her safe from the Prime Minister and anyone else. The Prime Minister sees Omega as strictly a tool. She is a clone, she is an item, she is a property of them and their planet, and her only use to him, honestly, is just to make a new batch of clones. They need a replacement for Jango Fett, and she's one of two people in the entire galaxy that has his DNA. So of course he's going to great lengths to get her back, but we also know that Nala Se is also going to great lengths to make sure that he doesn't have her. Now, I'm wondering why she's also trying so hard to keep her out of his hands. I'm wondering if the Prime Minister has more nefarious plans in store for Omega beyond just cloning her and making a new army for them to try to impress the Empire. So we know Fennec's main goal is to keep Omega safe, and we learn that Nala Se herself acknowledges the Bad Batch as sort of caretakers of Omega now, that there's no need for her to go after her at this point in time because she feels that she's safe. So maybe she finally trusts the Bad Batch, and Omega doesn't have to worry about Fennec Shan coming after her anymore, but possibly just Cad Bane himself. So it's nice to know that there's someone on the inside who's willing to help them out. I just hope that she herself, Nala Se, does not get injured or worse, get caught by the Empire. So it took a lot for Omega and the Bad Batch to reunite. She had to escape a clash between two deadly pursuers, Cad and Fennec, who were fighting simultaneously trying to capture her and honestly kill the other. But this was an epic class. This was truly awesome. A battle of titans, honestly. And I think this is one of those moments that we're going to look back on that's going to be cemented not only for this show, but Star Wars as a whole. Because this is a battle between a new bounty hunter, someone who's making a name, a rising star, versus the old veteran who's feared by many in their line of work. And we all know Cad Bane's a legend, especially in his exploits from the Clone Wars show. But we also know later on that Fennec Shand herself is also very notorious in the Mandalorian series because she's been into it for many years. So I could go on about the veteran and the rising star all day long. I'm going to try to keep this brief because this fight did have a lot behind it, and it could definitely mean a lot in the future going forward. So I wasn't even sure how this was going to happen until Cad's plan went wrong. I kind of thought things were going a little too smooth for him, and the crew was nowhere near them or able to find Omega. So I was really wondering what sort of was going to happen here. Maybe Omega was actually going to make her way back to Kamino. But that was until we saw that the one Kaminoan who was sent to retrieve her, Tuon, was found dead, and the killer was revealed to be Fennec. So with the chaos, of course, Omega is able to escape. And honestly, I have to add, throughout all of this, Omega is proving herself to be very capable, being able to communicate with the crew on the ship, trying to overload the terminal, and just overall escaping in this crazy situation, managing to get to the escape pod and into the air. She's become very capable, and I'm wondering if a lot of this is maybe due to her having Django's DNA. But to move away from that tangent, she was able to make it out of there, and honestly, these are two bounty hunters that when most people come to face with them, they don't make it out alive. So again, kudos to her. So this death match, honestly, between the both of them really showed just about everything they had. Cad used his signature rocket boots. Fennec showed that she's very capable as a fighter. She was really giving him some work, but we know he's a brawler himself and can keep up with just about anyone. But she was really showing herself here. And of course, we know later on in the Mandalorian series, she's still very capable in that as well. So it was nice to see her as sort of I don't know, maybe younger, quicker. And I'd like to see some of those moves in the series if we can get it with Boba Fett. But we'll save that for another time. So this fight seems to end in a draw. And before anyone says anything, I only say a draw because both of them lived. And if we know anything about these two, like I said, you don't make it out alive when you come face to face with either one of them. So at that, I will call it a draw. But if I did have to give an edge to someone and say who might have won the fight, I'm going to say Fennec. Yeah, Cad did have a few things over her, but she had the last laugh in terms of disabling his ship. That was a great chess move ahead of him. He had no idea. But she also had a few more times over him in the fight. And honestly, Cad was struggling a little bit, surprisingly. I wonder if, yes, she is just that good. Or I wonder if Cad's sort of getting a little slow in these older years of his. But hopefully he comes back and hopefully he can show a little more. But if I had to say who won this, again, I would say Fennec, honestly. So this Clash of the Titans really comes to an end, and Omega gets picked up by the crew, luckily. And in this, they're able to tell her why everything's going on with her and what makes her so special. So I'm really curious to see where this sort of goes with her and her realizing who she is. Maybe she can sort of find out what she's really meant to do. And also we can find out what the crew really wants to do from here on, now that all this information is coming to the front. So I'm going to get into predictions here. So of course, first off, Fennec and Cad, I think, are definitely going to be back, but in different ways. I think Fennec, first off, if she does come back, she's going to come back maybe not as an adversary, but I think sort of as a pseudo-protector of Omega. We know Nala Se has her on payroll, and that if she needs her again, Fennec will just answer the call, of course, and get paid to do so. But we know she's sort of an honorable character as well from watching her in the Mando series, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see her come back in this role. Now, Cad, on the other hand, Cad is definitely going to come back, but I think it might be a little more personal for him this time around. Whether it's personal against Fennec, personal against Omega, personal against the Bad Batch themselves, but I think he's definitely going to come back. You can't leave a guy out like that, and I'm sure he's going to be back and guns blazing, and I'm actually really excited for another great Cad Bane moment, hopefully. But we know with the Prime Minister also going after her, I'm sure he's going to keep using Cad to try to go after her. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him again in the next episode or possibly the one following that. So my next prediction here, and I'm sure this is going to come from a lot of people. So with the knowledge of first gen clones being brought up and the mentioning of Boba Fett, I wonder if this means he could pop up in the show after all. I know a lot of people speculated he could show up, but the question for why he would show up in the Bad Batch was the real question. You know, what if he did show up? What would his role be, and to what capacity? So he is an option for the Kaminoans to go after in order to get their clone sample. Would they go after him? Possibly, if they can find and capture him. But we also know that he has another connection that we've just witnessed, and that's Cad Bane himself. So him and Boba have this legendary face-off that is supposedly, by rumor, the end of Cad Bane. But I wonder if we've had that, if that's happened yet. And if it hasn't happened, it would be a good way to sort of bring him back into the fold, maybe, in terms of trying to finally go after Cad Bane. And as a result, he ends up meeting the Bad Batch and Omega along the way. But it's a stretch, it's a far reach. If Boba Fett does come into the series, that would be amazing. But at this time, it's just a major speculation, if you will. And my last prediction, I'm sure the Empire is going to be back in some capacity, possibly in this next episode. Maybe not with Crosshair. I'm sure he's healing up and becoming stronger as they're trying to escape right now. But I think the Empire needs to show themselves a little more in this series. They haven't had too much of a presence really since the beginning of it, and I think it's time for them to come back into the limelight. Maybe even Tarkin will have something himself to come after this crew, especially with this defeat from Crosshair in episode 8. That's going to be all for me today, folks. What an awesome ride for this episode. So much going on. Epic fight between Cad Bane, Fennec Shan, again, a clash of the Titans. And we got some great reveals of Omega and why she's so important. Possibly, again, like I said, a number of things that she's been able to do, and of course how that comes from her lineage. But I'm sure we'll find out more in the near future. I hope the hype train really keeps going with finding out more about Omega and why she's so special, the Empire and what they're trying to do, of course. And of course, hopefully we get more Fennec and Cad Bane in the near future as well. That's going to be a treat. But with that, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, or dislike if you really feel like it. I don't know why you would. Amazing episode. But anyways, let me know what you think down below in the comments about this episode, any predictions you got going forward, and I'll see you guys next week for episode 10.